Today I'm going to cover Oldhim, mostly because I want to start branching away from Dash a little bit. I feel like I've sort of exhausted what I know on the hero. Anything else at this point feels like it's a little bit above my player skill. So I want to try to branch into a few different heroes. So we're going to be covering Oldhim, who I've been playing a lot lately. We're going to walk through a quick primer about the card pool, how he plays, and then also a quick budget list at the end. Oldhim is a elemental guardian, both adult and young, and you're going to have access to both the earth and the ice card pool. This allows Oldhim to have a lot of flexibility in the tools that he can run, really opens up his sideboard slots. You get a lot of utility from having both the Guardian, the Earth, and the Ice class type. To quickly walk through what his playstyle is going to be like, you're going to be mixing a lot of defense with really punishing disruptive attacks. This is not really an aggro deck, but it's not entirely a hyper defensive deck either, although you can play it like that with the amount of 3 blocks in the card pool. But you're really going to be pivoting between a mix of defensive turns and then pivoting into an aggressive turn, try to snowball the game from there. Let's quickly walk through Oldhim's hero ability. This is a once per turn defense reaction where you're going to pay 3, and if an earth card is pitched this way, you're going to prevent the next 2 damage you would take this turn, and if it's an ice card that's pitched this way, your opponent has to put a card from their hand on top of their deck. So let's quickly go into Blitz really quick and look at Pulsive Eisenloft. This card is banned in Classic Constructed, but still available in Blitz. This is a Ice Earth defense reaction, but more importantly, it's a blue pitch. Now what's interesting about this is if you pitch a card like Pulsive Eisenloft, you actually get both effects. So as a defense reaction, you can pitch Pulsive Eisenloft to Oldhim's ability, and then you would prevent the next 2 damage because you pitched an earth card, and since you pitched an ice card, you would also make your opponent put a card on top of their deck. Using this is a really good way to stack cards like Oakenold, which are really good finishers. Oakenold pairs really nicely with Pulsive Eisenloft. Pulsive Eisenloft double fuses Oakenold, but you can do this with anything else. So if you pitch a yellow earth card or an ice card and then pitch another card to pay for the cost, if it's a different element, you can also get both effects. Most of the time, you're just going to be using the ice reaction because it's a very strong effect to make your opponent lose their arsenal card, or to just prevent sometimes up to 4 or 5 damage on average with the current rate of aggressive cards. But this also goes into another fundamental of Oldhim, which is going to be pitch stacking. Oldhim can play defensively in the early game and then likes to finish out games. So for instance, you could pitch Pulsive Eisenloft to use the reaction ability, but more importantly, so you can stack it down with cards like Glacial Footsteps or Endless Winter, and then you can redraw them in the late game. So let's jump into what you get in both of the elemental card pools. Ice has a lot of disruption, has a lot of taxing effects, things that shut down your opponent's turn, make them lose cards, increase the cost of cards. So we have Channel Lake Frigid Blizzard and Frostfang are 3 really good examples. And then paired with Oldhim's hero ability, they can also remove cards from your opponent's hand. A few more examples would be these cards, for the sake of disrupting your opponent, which is mostly what Ice does. Ice really likes to force your opponent to pay costs, which they can't do without losing a card from their hand, increases the cost of their cards. And you still do have some really good just raw stats in the ice pool as well. You have Winter's Crest, which is still a 3 block, right? It's an auto inclusion in Oldhim. And then when you go into Earth, it's a little bit more muddied, but Earth is more into recursion. They're into situational card draw and buffing. So Channel Mount Heroic would be an example of a card that buffs attacks. So you also have something like Turn Timber that would really buff your defense, for instance. You also see that on Pulsive Eisenloft, as Pulsive Eisenloft buffs the defense value of the cards on the combat chain that you're blocking with. Now let's go into the more defensive tactics you're going to get from mostly the generic card pool, but also a little bit of the Guardian card pool. So of course you're going to have really amazing generics like Sink Below, Fate Foreseen, Sigil of Solace. These are really good defensive tools, but also you get cards like Staunch Response that are really effective when you're playing this kind of play style. And you're also going to get some really fantastic equipment. Crown of Seeds maybe deserves a whole video on its own. It's an incredibly powerful equipment that lets you essentially turn 1 card into 2 block, basically, normally synergizing with Rampart of the Ram's Head. As long as you can arsenal, you can pitch a card, put your card on the bottom of your deck, Crown of Seeds, and then Rampart of the Ram's Head. The reason why this is really effective is because mixed with Oldhim's defense reaction, you're able to pitch stack really effectively. You can put whatever card you want in your arsenal, you can put on the bottom of your deck, and then depending on what card you pitch to Crown of Seeds, or if you want to use Oldhim's ability, it's very easy to stack cards together. So you could put Oakenold in your arsenal, you could pitch an earth card, for instance, to use Crown of Seeds during your opponent's turn and block damage, obviously, and then you could ice react them as well. And not only have you efficiently blocked out your opponent's turn and disrupted them, you've now perfectly pitch stacked Oakenold with an Earth and an Ice card, and next turn you pitch blue for some reason, maybe to use your weapon, or you pitch a blue on the following turn to use Crown of Seeds again, and now you've perfectly pitch stacked a hand that can play Oakenold and confuse it. Because of stuff like that, Crown of Seeds is just a fantastic card. The raw value on it's crazy, especially combined with Tunic. You can just pay 1 off the Tunic to use Crown of Seeds and get a 5-card hand and still be blocking 1. If you want even more defensive options, the Guardian card pool has it. You have Crater Fist, Tectonic Plating, Stalagmite. These are all cards with 3 block on them because they block for 2, they get a -1 counter, and then they block for 1. So right here, for instance, you would have a setup that is worth 9 life. Stalagmite can be really effective in certain matchups where your opponent needs 1 resource at the end of their turn to do a lot of damage. So for instance, Runeblade, you can shut down Rosetta Thorn using Stalagmite, and that on its own is worth about 11 life because you're blocking 3, but you're also preventing 8 damage because you're preventing 2 Rosetta Thorn swings. So right there, you're blocking 11, which breaks, I think, the value of any other equipment on its own. Now let's jump into Oldhim's weapon, his main weapon, Winter's Wail. This is probably, debatably, one of the best weapons in the game. The ability to pitch an ice card and then come in for 4 to threaten a frostbite every single turn is amazing. It makes that card above rate, and it also taxes your opponent as well. The fact that you can turn any blue card into 4 damage every single turn is amazing. The disruption's fantastic. It also means late game when your opponent goes to 1, you have to start blocking 2 cards to the 1 card that you pitch, and you eventually just fatigue your opponent out. The weapon is really incredible, and it's probably one of the best reasons to be playing Oldhim in my opinion. Now let's go to what the aggressive turns from Oldhim look like. So you're ready to pivot, you've been blocking out, you have an opportunity. One of the classics is Command and Conquer, pitching to blue, Fiendal's Spring Tunic, use your counter, you have 2 floating, and then Pummel. The fact that you have Tunic is what makes this really readily available to you as a 3-card hand. You can also use Terra Sunder and Winter's Wail in combination. This is another really good late game finisher. Normally when your opponent has exhausted their armors, it's pretty easy to block early game. Also, even your blues are disruptive. So here we have Disable, which is a 3-card hand that threatens your opponent's arsenal. You also have Endless Winter. If it hits, whenever they activate an ability, they're going to get a Frostbite during the turn. And if it's fused, whenever they add a card to the chain blocking it, they're also going to get a Frostbite. It also includes armor and defense reactions. So you also have Spinal Crush. And then we can go back to the Ice card pool, of course. These are also tempo cards that you can play that swing your position in the matchup. So you can take damage to send back Channel Lake Frigid, but then your opponent probably isn't going to be able to play much on their turn. You can send Frostfang, for example. Blizzard can shut down an opponent's turn. And then also you have your late game finishers, which can be cards like Macho Grande, Glacial Footsteps. These are blues you're going to pitch early, either to use your abilities, use your Crown of Seeds, depending on what format you're in, and then you can also finish up with Oakenold. Now finally, let's just show a quick budget list if you are interested in this hero and you don't want to spend that amount of money. But if you're looking for a budget option, here's a $20 deck that you can play in Blitz. I think has pretty much all the main core of the deck. So thank you for watching. I'm planning on covering a CC list of Oldhim that I think you could bring to the ProQuest season. This is a more defensive style deck, so if you're interested in the more aggressive Oldhim, I think you can definitely find guides out there for something along those lines, but I wanted to show off a more defensive list I've been working on. So until next time, thank you for watching.